Sunday morning, with mist still lingering in the air and the world not fully awake. A wild idea suddenly popped into my head. Today, I'm going to catch that old rooster in the coop and turn him into a proper grilled feast, as a tribute to all the days he crowed me into waking up on time for work. Wearing a worn-out raincoat and a pair of broken plastic sandals hanging on by a thread, I marched out with a plastic basket in one hand and the fire of determination in my eyes. But the rooster must have sensed my evil plot, because the moment I peeked my head around the coop, he shot out like a rocket, wings flapping like mad, beak screaming what sounded like, "Crowing is my right, don't you dare touch me." I started the morning just like any other, feeding the chickens as usual. After that came the next routine task, gathering all the eggs scattered around the coop. Lately, the chickens in my yard have been laying eggs all over the place, turning my mornings into a real life treasure hunt. Anywhere could be their gold drop zone, under the tree, in an old pile of straw, even tucked inside a forgotten sandal. Realizing this chaos couldn't go on, I decided it was time to build them proper straw nests so they'd finally lay their eggs where they're supposed to. I started gathering straw, carefully picking out spots that were both discreet and clean, then shaped the bundles into round nests with a thick, soft center for extra comfort. At first, the chickens seemed skeptical, eyeing the new setup with suspicion and keeping their distance. But after a few test runs and cautious inspections, they finally gave in and decided to make the nests their new favorite spot. After finishing the nests for the hens, I stood there beaming with pride, feeling like I had just built a set of mini villas for chickens. A few of them started to wander over, one gave it a test sit, another tiptoed around inspecting every corner, while I stood with arms crossed like a proud architect waiting for client feedback. But as I was scanning the coop, my eyes suddenly locked onto the old rooster, the one that never shuts up before dawn and spends his days strutting around flirting shamelessly, totally distracting the hens from their egg-laying duties. I stared at him, he stared back, and in that moment, his eyes said it all. Sure, you built the nests, but this yard is mine. Without a word, I reached out and grabbed him. He flailed like crazy, wings beating, feet kicking. I got all the essentials ready, and for a moment, it felt like I was about to conduct a grand village ceremony rather than just roast a chicken. The atmosphere carried a hint of solemnity, but it was far from silent. Soft chuckles echoed here and there as people laughed over the chaos of runaway chickens and failed attempts to catch them. Once everything was set, I moved through each step methodically, occasionally drifting into random thoughts like, I wonder if after all this, it'll dream about me when it becomes dinner. After everything was done, I looked at the result, a perfectly cleaned, golden, skinned chicken resting neatly in the basket, looking like it was ready to compete in some kind of culinary beauty pageant. After handling the old rooster and letting it rest in peace, awaiting its destiny with spices, I grabbed my old basket and headed out to the garden with the confidence of a countryside chef ready to conquer the day. My garden isn't anything grand, but every time I step into it, it feels like wandering through a natural supermarket, completely free, endlessly fresh, and blessedly free of annoying background music. First up were the lemongrass stalks, the must-have ingredient if you want your chicken to be not just fragrant but full of swagger. I headed straight to the garden corner where the lemongrass grew in tight formation like a squad of scent soldiers. Bending down, I picked out the fattest stalks with pale white bases and vibrant green blades, and just looking at them, I could already smell that fresh, citrusy aroma dancing in my mind. Then I reached down and snapped each stalk out of the ground with the kind of confident flair you'd expect from a professional chef making a dramatic entrance on a cooking show. Next came the lime leaves, a small but mighty ingredient, the kind of final touch that lifts a chicken dish to a whole new level of flavor. I made my way to the old lime tree in the corner of the garden, its canopy always lush and deep green, carrying that subtle, refreshing citrus scent that whispers promise with every breeze. I gently ran my fingers along the branches, carefully selecting leaves that were neither too young nor too old. They had to be thick, vibrant, and packed with fragrance to truly shine when torn and sprinkled over the grilled chicken. With each leaf I snapped off, there was a soft, satisfying pop, like the crisp click of a well-made decision sealing the deal. Next came digging up the ginger, a slightly muddy task, but one that made me feel like I was hunting for buried treasure beneath the earth. I grabbed my trusty little hoe and made my way to the garden corner where clusters of ginger plants were packed together among the wild grass. At first glance, it didn't look like much, just another messy patch of green, but hidden beneath the surface was a secret stash of pure flavor gold. I picked a cluster with tall stalks and healthy leaves, then started digging carefully around it to loosen the soil. Every swing of the hoe came with a bit of held breath. I didn't want to scratch or bruise the ginger, because the best kind is whole, unbroken, and smooth. Digging a little deeper, I began to see those dark golden roots pushing through the earth, rising like plump little fingers waving up at me from underground. After unearthing a good batch of fresh ginger, I felt like I had just completed a vital mission, because without ginger, grilled chicken would miss that signature warmth, that fiery edge that makes people smack their lips with every bite and remember the flavor long after the meal is over. With all the ingredients now spotless and fragrant, neatly resting in the basin, it was time to enter the phase that makes every knife shiver, the chopping stage. The old wooden cutting board, which had been lying dormant on the shelf all week like it was on vacation, suddenly seemed to awaken from hibernation the moment I stepped toward it, bracing itself for battle. I started with the lemongrass, slicing each stalk lengthwise before finally chopping it into thin shreds. The knife made a steady sound with every stroke, and the pieces fell onto the board like fragrant snow. The aroma rose up instantly, and I couldn't help but take a deep breath, letting out a soft gasp like I'd just caught a whiff of some fancy cologne. Once all the ingredients were finely chopped and lined up neatly like a well-disciplined army ready for battle, I moved on to the most crucial step, stuffing the flavor arsenal into the chicken. I opened the chicken's belly, the faint scent of fresh meat rising up, then gently slid in handfuls of sliced lemongrass, like laying down a fragrant carpet for its soon-to-be seasoned insides. Next came the ginger, thin slices tucked in carefully, layering it like a spicy little mattress underneath. As for the lime leaves, I rolled them into tiny bundles and stuffed them into every crevice I could find, as if I were decorating its interior with all-natural aromatherapy. After stuffing the old rooster until it looked like a suitcase packed with snacks, I glanced up at the sky, then over at the stove, thinking to myself, now it's time to find the firewood and spark the flame of destiny. I grabbed my bamboo basket, threw on a hat, and made my way to the back of the garden, where dry logs lay scattered like they'd been waiting all this time to be reborn as warmth and aroma. Each step I took brought me closer to the most glorious barbecue feast of my life. I began picking up each solid piece of firewood, tapping them together to hear that crisp tock-tock sound, like testing the crunch of a good baguette. I prioritized the older, drier logs with plenty of cracks in the grain because, according to folksy wisdom, the more cracked the wood, the longer it burns, and the better it makes the food taste. After a while, my basket was filled with wood of all sizes. From a distance, I might have looked like someone out selling charcoal, but really, I was out here buying back happiness with nothing but sweat and straw dust. I began lighting the fire, kicking off this sacred roast chicken ceremony like I was starting a bonfire for some grand countryside food summit. First, I grabbed a few handfuls of dry straw, rolled them into tight bundles, and tucked them neatly into the center of a carefully arranged frame of small firewood, an architectural masterpiece of backyard barbecue science. After the firewood had burned down, leaving behind a glowing bed of red, hot embers quietly smoldering at the bottom of the stove like a tiny stream of lava waiting to do something great, I knew the golden moment had arrived. It was time to roast the chicken. I began turning the chicken slowly, bit by bit, like spinning the wheel of destiny itself. As I rotated it, I listened closely to the crackling sound of fat dripping onto the hot coals, each sizzle like a tiny applause, while waves of aroma rolled out and made my stomach rumble like a ceremonial drum. The scent of lemongrass rose first, rich and earthy, followed by the fiery warmth of ginger and a refreshing hint of lime leaves, all blending into a fragrant symphony that, with just one deep inhale, sent my mind soaring straight back to those cozy childhood meals in the countryside. The chicken's skin began shifting shades, from pale yellow to golden, then deepening into a rich brown, with tiny bubbles rising and popping on the surface like it was quietly whispering. I'm ready. I kept turning it, fanning and blowing gently. My face flushed from the heat, eyes half closed from the overwhelming aroma, and my heart full of joy like I'd just seen the light at the end of the hunger tunnel. With every turn, I inspected carefully. Any spot to pale, I adjusted the heat. Any area nearing a burn, I shielded it right away. The whole chicken was turning into a sculpture carved by flavor. And I, the artist in worn plastic sandals and drenched in sweat, was the one shaping this little miracle by hand. I didn't rush the roasting. I let each fiber of meat cook slowly, soaking in every bit of seasoning and effort. And when the entire chicken turned a glistening golden brown, bursting with aroma, the skin perfectly crisp and the inside tender and juicy, I knew this was no longer just a meal. It was a victory, a small, quiet triumph of a man with a chicken, a fire, and a countryside afternoon steeped in simplicity, scented with memories. When the chicken was perfectly cooked, its skin puffed up and crackling, the fat glistening gold along every tender slice of meat, the aroma rose thick and glorious, spreading through the yard like a festive celebration. I carried the whole skewer out and set it down on a wooden tray in the middle of the courtyard, then called for my little sister. She came running, sniffing the air like a scent-tracking hound, eyes wide with excitement, already clutching her own little bowl of homemade lime pepper salt. The two of us sat cross-legged across from each other, saying nothing, just staring at the chicken like it was a masterpiece about to disappear into our stomachs.